Nobody stole from me. I want that established before anything else, because it is the only fact in this account that people refuse to accept. In 13 years in Phuket, I was never robbed, never scammed, never cheated on a bill, never charged for wrong price by anybody who mattered. No woman took my money. No lawyer took my money. There is no villain in this recording, and if you are waiting for one, you should stop watching now, because what I have instead is a number. I arrived in Patong in November 2013 with 280,000 euros, which was 11.2 million baht at the rate that month. I am 71 years old. It is 2026, and I have 41,000 baht in the bank, and a German state pension of 1,340 euros a month, which is the only reason I am not on a plane. I spent 11.2 million baht in 76 months. I did it myself, 6 nights a week, smiling, and every single person who took that money said thank you, and most of them meant it. My name is Uwe. This is the account of my last good year, which was 2019, and which I enjoyed enormously. I operated a gantry crane at the inland port in Duisburg for 34 years. If you do not know Duisburg, it is the largest inland port in the world, a place of containers and coal dust and rain, and I was good at my work, and I was proud of it, in the way men of my generation were permitted to be proud, which is silently. I married Ingrid in 1979, and we divorced in 2008, and it was nobody's fault except that we had run out of things to say by about 1996, and took another 12 years to admit it. My son Stefan was born in 1983. He is a physiotherapist in Oberhausen. When I turned 58, the port offered a severance package to the older operators, and I sold the house in Duisburg-Rheinhausen for 190,000 euros. And with my savings, that made 280, and I sat in an empty kitchen in the rain and did the only calculation I ever performed properly, which was this. My German pension would not begin until I was 63. 5 years of no income. In Germany, 280,000 euros must last 5 years, and then supplement a small pension for 20 more. In Thailand, this was the arithmetic, and it was correct. 60,000 baht a month is a good life, and 11 million baht is 15 years of 60,000 baht a month, and the pension arrives in year 5 and extends it beyond my death. I ran that calculation once, in Duisburg, in 2013. I never ran it again. I chose Patong for a stupid reason, and I will give it to you honestly. I had been there for 2 weeks in 2009 with a man from the port, and I had, in those 2 weeks, been happier than at any point in the previous 15 years. That is the whole analysis. I did not consider Chiang Mai. I did not consider the Northeast. I rented an apartment above a laundry on a Soi off Ratuthit Road for 14,000 baht a month, which was 3,000 more than I had planned, and I want you to notice how small that first overrun was, because that is how it starts. Not with a woman, not with a scheme, but with 3,000 baht for a balcony you looked at once and wanted. In my first month, I did the things a man does. I found a doctor. I found a place for breakfast. I bought a motorbike, second-hand, 42,000. And on the 11th night I walked down to a small bar on a side swai off Bangla, sat at the end of it because I did not want to be looked at, and by midnight I had bought a round for 4 strangers, and one of them clapped me on the shoulder and called me a good man, and I went home that night feeling something I had not felt in Duisburg since perhaps 1988. I need to be precise about what the money bought, because if you think it bought sex you have not understood anything, and you will not understand what happened to me. There was some of that, in the early years, and it was not important, and it is not what emptied the account. What the money bought was a room turning toward me when I came in. That is the entire mechanism. In Duisburg I was a competent man in a yellow helmet, whom perhaps 9 people would have noticed if he stopped arriving. In Patong, I discovered, at 58, that for the price of a round of drinks, 600 baht, at first, I could be the reason a table was happy, and the second night it cost 800, because the table was bigger, and the 4th night I bought for the staff too, because they had been kind to me, and within 2 months I had a stool that was mine, a nickname, and 4 men who greeted me by it. Nobody engineered this. I want to say that with force. Kun Rachani, who owns the bar, never once encouraged me to spend, and twice in 13 years she quietly did not charge me for things. The girls did not work me. There was no plan. I built the whole thing myself out of nothing but the sensation of walking into a room and being wanted, and I paid for it nightly, in cash, at a rate that started at 600 baht and finished, in my last good year, at about 3,000. I should break down what 3,000 baht a night actually is, because men hear that figure and imagine champagne, and it is nothing of the sort, and the ordinariness is the point. It is this. You arrive at 7. You buy your own beer, 90 baht. 2 of the regulars are already there and you buy theirs, 180. At about 8 a third arrives and you buy a round for the table, 320. Somebody's birthday is mentioned and you put 500 behind the bar for the staff, and the staff say thank you individually, one by one, which takes about 90 seconds and is worth more to you than anything else that happens all day. At 9 you eat there rather than at home, 260. Between 9 and midnight there are 4 more rounds and you take all 4, because you always take all 4, which is roughly 1,200. At some point somebody's motorbike is out of fuel, or somebody's phone bill is due, and there is a 200 or a 300 that is never mentioned again by anyone. You tip the girl who has been running the drinks, 100. You get a bike taxi home because it is raining, 80. That is 2,940 baht, and there is not one item on that list that any reasonable person would identify as extravagance. And you could sit at that table for a decade and never once feel that you had done anything at all except be pleasant. Multiply by 6. Multiply by 52. Multiply by 6 years. That is 11 million baht, assembled entirely out of items under 500 baht, and this is why nobody sees it happening, and why nobody can be blamed, and why the only instrument that would ever have caught it is the one instrument I refused to use, which was addition. The men who received it were not parasites either, and this is the part that took me longest to accept. There were 3 of them mainly. I will not use their names. An Englishman, a Dutchman, and a Norwegian, all between 60 and 70, all with less money than me, and all of whom I genuinely liked, and 2 of whom I still speak to. They did not use me. They simply allowed me to do what I insisted on doing, which is a different and much more comfortable crime, and one that any of us would commit. If a man wants to buy your beer every night for 6 years and becomes visibly happier when you let him, at what point exactly is it your duty to refuse? I have never found the answer to that, and I no longer look for it. What I know is that they never asked once, and I never let them pay, and after about the 2nd year, the not letting them pay had hardened into an identity that I could not have put down without becoming someone else in front of everybody who knew me. There is a subtraction I have never seen anybody describe, and I want it in this account, because the money is the least of it. In 2013 I read books, 2 or 3 a month, history mostly, the Second World War and the Ruhr, and I had brought about 40 of them in the shipping box. I stopped in roughly 2016. Not decided, stopped, because reading happens in the evening, and the evening had been allocated. In 2014, I swam 3 mornings a week off the north end of Patong Beach, properly, a kilometer. That ended in 2017, and the reason it ended is that a man who gets home at 2 cannot swim at 7, and I did not notice the trade because it was never presented as one. I had brought a chess set. I played twice. There was a German-speaking group that met on Thursdays in Kathu for lunch, and I went 4 times in 2015, and liked all of them, and stopped going because Thursday lunch is a poor use of a man who is out until 2. I had planned, in Duisburg, at that kitchen table, to see Vietnam and Cambodia, and to take a train through Malaysia. In 13 years I have left Thailand twice, both times for visa runs to Penang, both times returning on the first available flight, because I did not like being away from the bar, and I would not have been able to tell you why. So when people ask what I spent 11 million baht on, the honest answer is, not drink and not women, and not even the rounds. I spent it on a schedule. I bought one single evening, the same evening, approximately 2,200 times, and everything else I had ever intended to do with my 60s, fitted into the hours that evening, did not want. I want to describe how fast the transformation happened, because I had assumed, before it happened to me, that a man's character was a fairly solid object. Mine took about 14 weeks. In Duisburg I was, by any measure, a careful man. I had run the same household budget on paper since 1981. Ingrid used to say I audited the shopping. And I had never in my life carried a balance on a credit card. And when the port offered the severance, I negotiated it for 6 weeks, over a detail worth 4,000 euros. That man got on a plane in November 2013. By March 2014, he was buying rounds for people whose surnames he did not know, and he did not experience this as a change of character. He experienced it as being on holiday, and then, when the holiday did not end, he experienced it as his real personality finally being permitted to emerge, which is the specific lie this country tells Northern European men, and the reason so many of us are still here. I genuinely believed in 2014 that the careful man in Duisburg had been a suppression, and that the generous man in Patong was the truth, released. What I know now is that they were both real, and that the careful one was load-bearing, and that I demolished him in a quarter of a year to make room for someone more popular. The second thing that happened fast was the loss of the reference frame. In Duisburg, 90 euros is a number with a shape. It is a week of groceries. It is 4 hours of my labor on the crane. In Patong, 3,000 baht is a color. It is a note. It is what a night is. It is not attached to anything I ever earned. I lost the ability to feel money within about 6 months of arriving, and I never regained it, and I have since concluded this is the single most dangerous thing that happens to a foreigner in a cheap country, more dangerous than any woman and any business scheme. You do not have to lose your judgment. You only have to lose your sense of scale, and everything else follows automatically. And nobody notices because a man who has lost his sense of scale looks exactly like a man who is relaxed. Fawn came in 2015. She was 33 then, from Nakhon Si Thammarat, working the cash register at a mini-mart on Rat Uthit, and I want to be clear that she never worked in a bar, never asked me for a single baht in 11 years, and paid for her own mother's funeral in 2021 without telling me it was happening, because by then she knew I could not have helped. We were together in a loose way for 6 years, and we are still friends, and she is married now to a Thai man who drives for a hotel, and I have eaten at their house. She is the second reason this recording has no villain in it, and she is also the reason I cannot claim ignorance, because Fawn told me to stop. Twice, specifically, with dates I remember. The first was 2017, on the balcony, when she asked me how much money I had left and I said enough, and she said, in English, Uva, you don't know. You never look. Which was true. The second was in August 2019, and I will come to it in its place. She told me twice, in 11 years, without drama, without leverage, without anything to gain, and I heard her both times, and I did nothing both times, and there is no arrangement of these facts in which anybody but me is responsible for what followed. The 6 years from 2013 to 2018, I will give you as numbers, because the detail does not vary. Planned burn, 60,000 baht a month. Actual, year 1, 95,000. Year 2, 112. By 2016, 130. The rent went from 14 to 18 when I moved somewhere with a pool I used perhaps 20 times. The bike became a better bike. The nightly spend went from 600 to 1,500 to 2,500, and each increase was invisible, because each increase was one more round. And one more round is never a decision. It is a mood. I did not track any of this. I looked at my bank balance perhaps 4 times a year, in the way you look at a wound without unwrapping it. And each time the number was smaller, and each time I told myself that the pension was coming in 2018 and would change the arithmetic. And in October 2018 the pension did arrive, 1,340 euros. And I want to describe what that did, because it is the cruelest turn in this whole account. It did not save me. It did the opposite. Because for 5 years I had carried a low background dread about capital, and the moment income started arriving every month, the dread stopped, and I read that relief as safety. In fact, I had just begun receiving 47,000 baht a month, against a spending rate of 150,000. The pension bought me nothing except the feeling of solvency, at the exact moment I could least afford to feel it. Terry was at the end of the bar in those years, and I have to introduce him now, because everything in this story is really about Terry. English, from Reading, 72 when I met him, a small dry man who nursed one beer for 3 hours, and who nobody talked to much. He had been in Phuket since 2004. He had a room in Kathu, no motorbike, and he walked. Twice a week or so I would put a beer in front of him without discussion, and he would nod and say cheers, and that was our relationship for 6 years. I thought of it, if I am honest, as charity, and I felt good about it, and I never once asked him a single question about his life. Not one. I want to state that plainly, because it is the specific failure this whole recording exists to describe. I sat 2 meters from the complete documentation of my own future for 6 years, and I did not ask it anything, because I had decided in advance what he was, and what he was not me. Now, 2019, January. I began the year with 1,900,000 baht. I am telling you that number now. I did not know it then. I want that understood clearly, because people hear these accounts and imagine a man watching a countdown, and there was no countdown. There was a man having an excellent January. What I knew in January 2019 was that Songkran was coming, that a friend from Duisburg was visiting in February, and that Fawn and I were going to Krabi for 4 days. What I did not know, and could have known in 90 seconds on a bank app, was that at my established rate, I had roughly 12 months of capital remaining. That gap, between what I knew and what was available to be known, is the entire architecture of my ruin. There was no deception involved anywhere. The information was free, continuously available, and one thumbprint away, for 6 years. February and March were the peak of my life, and I will not apologize for saying so. My friend Bernd came from Duisburg with his wife for 11 days, and I showed them Phuket the way a man shows people his own country. I paid for everything. Restaurants, the boat to Fifi, the hotel upgrade when their room was bad. Bernd tried 3 times to pay, and I would not permit it, and I remember the specific pleasure of that refusal. The small movement of the hand, the "it's nothing." On their last night we were at the bar, and the staff sang for them, and the whole room was involved, and Bernd said to me, in German, quietly, "Du hast es geschafft." You made it. And I have thought about that sentence perhaps 4,000 times since. He meant it. From where he sat, it was obviously true. I was a man of 63 in a warm country, surrounded by people who were delighted to see him, and the man saying it went home to a bungalow in Rheinhausen and a job he had 18 months left in. He was right about everything he could see. 11 days cost me 184,000 baht. Capital at the end of March, 1,700,000. The nickname by then was Papa Uva. I had not chosen it and I did not think about where it came from, and it was used with real affection by people who had known me for years, and it was also used by staff who had started 3 weeks earlier and had simply been told that this is what the German is called. In April, at Songkran, somebody took a photograph of me on the soi outside the bar, soaked, with my arms round 2 of the staff, laughing, and it went up behind the till in a plastic frame, and it is still there. I saw it 2 weeks ago. I want to describe what that photograph actually shows, now that I can read it. It shows a man at the exact center of a room he has purchased. Everyone in it is fond of him. Nothing in it is fake. And the invoice for that photograph, if you allocate the year's spending across the nights, is about 11,000 baht for the evening, and the man in the picture had, at that moment, 16 months of life left in his account, and did not know it, and was as happy as I have ever seen a human being. In June, my granddaughter was baptized in Oberhausen, and I did not go. I have to do this part properly. Stefan's daughter was born in November 2018, and I had promised him, on the phone, in the first hour, weeping, which I had not done in decades, that I would be there for everything. The baptism was set for the 9th of June. In April I told him I would come. In late May I told him there was a problem with my visa timing, which was a lie, and the truth was that a return flight in June was 38,000 baht, and I had, in the same month, already spent 31,000 at the bar, and I could not construct a version of the month that contained both. And rather than construct a version of the month that contained one, and not the other, I lied to my son. That is the sentence. There is no softer arrangement of it. He said it was fine. He sent photographs. We spoke perhaps 5 more times that year. In 2013 we spoke weekly. In 2016 monthly. And by 2019 it was Christmas. His birthday, mine, and twice more. The decay was gradual, and it was entirely my doing, and it was not caused by money. It was caused by the fact that a man cannot easily telephone his son while he is becoming someone his son would not recognize. Capital at the end of June, 1,350,000. August was Fawn's second warning, and it was not a conversation, it was an intervention, and it lasted about 90 seconds. She came to the apartment on a Sunday morning, and she did not sit down, and she said that a woman at the minimart had told her that I had asked to pay for cigarettes with coins, which was true. I had emptied a jar. She said, "Uwe, how much?" And for the first time in 6 years, standing in my own kitchen at 11 in the morning, with a woman who had never taken 1 baht from me, I opened the app in front of another human being. It said 940,000 baht. She looked at it. She did not say anything for a while. Then she said, "And this is the second worst thing anyone has ever said to me," and she said it kindly. "This is 2 years, maybe less. You want to be here after?" I said yes. She said, "Then stop the bar. Not stop drinking. Stop the paying." And I said I would, and I meant it completely. And that night I went to the bar, because I had arranged to meet the Norwegian, and I paid, because he was already there, and it would have been strange. And I want every man watching to understand that this is what a resolution actually dies of. Not weakness. Awkwardness. I could not work out how to become a man who does not buy the round in front of people who had known me for 6 years as the man who buys the round. It was easier to spend 11 million baht than to be embarrassed for one evening. May and July I will give you together because they are the same month. In May I had a small stroke of luck that I read as a large one. A broker in Frankfurt sold a fund I had forgotten I held, from 1998, and 11,000 euros arrived unannounced, about 380,000 baht. I want you to watch what a man in my condition does with 380,000 baht. He does not put it aside. He does not obviously count anything. He experiences it as confirmation. That is the word. Not relief, not luck. Confirmation. Evidence that things have a way of working out. That the account has depths he has forgotten. That a man who has lived correctly is looked after. I paid 4 months of rent in advance, which felt like prudence, and was in fact the removal of the only monthly reminder I had that money was finite, and I spent the rest across 9 weeks without a single purchase over 4,000 baht. In July my knee began to hurt, badly, on stairs, and the doctor at Patong hospital said the word arthritis, and recommended I lose 8 kilograms and stop sitting on a bar stool for 6 hours a night. I did lose the weight, over about 4 months, because I have always been able to do anything that can be done alone and in silence. I did not change the stool. That is the whole of me in 2 sentences. Give me a difficult physical instruction that requires discipline and no witnesses, and I will execute it perfectly. Ask me to be a slightly different man in front of 8 people who like me, and I could not manage a single evening of it in 6 years. There was an aftermath to that Sunday morning that I have not told anybody until now. Fawn left the apartment at about 11:30, and I sat at the table for a long time, and then I did something I had not done since 2013. I opened a spreadsheet. Not a proper one, a page of a notebook actually, with 3 columns, rent and food and bar, and I wrote out 1 month honestly, and the bar column came to 72,000 baht, and I sat and looked at 72,000 baht written in my own handwriting. And then I closed the notebook and put it in a drawer, and I went to the bar that evening, and the notebook stayed in that drawer for 4 years, and I found it in 2023, when I was packing to move rooms again, and the paper had gone soft, and the number was still there in my writing, 72, underlined twice. So do not let anybody tell you these men do not know. I knew. I knew in August 2019 in writing, in my own hand, underlined, and the knowledge changed precisely nothing, and that is the fact that separates this category of ruin from every other story on this channel. The men who are robbed find out at the end. I found out in the middle, on paper, with 16 months left and a woman standing in my kitchen telling me the answer, and I went out that night at 7 o'clock as usual. Stefan came once. I have not mentioned it, and I nearly left it out, which tells you it belongs in here. October 2016, 5 days, on his own. His wife was pregnant later, this was before, and he stayed in a hotel because my apartment had 1 bedroom, and I took him to the bar on the second night and introduced him to everybody as my son, and they made a great fuss of him, and he was polite and pleasant, and drank 2 beers, and asked to leave at 10:30. The next night he said he was tired. The night after that he said, over dinner at a proper restaurant that I insisted on paying for. Papa, is it every night? Not accusing. Curious, in the way a physiotherapist is curious, which is to say diagnostically. And I said, no, of course not. It is because you are here. And that was the first lie, told in 2016, 3 years before the one about the baptism, and it was told easily, and I did not even register it as a lie at the time. He flew home on the Friday. He has never come back, and I have never asked him to, and neither of those facts has ever been discussed by either of us. When my granddaughter was born, he sent a photograph and the message said, "Sie hat deine Ohren," she has your ears. And I looked at that photograph in the bar, at the table, at about 9 in the evening, with a round on its way, and I want to be exact about this because it is the closest thing to a moment of grace in the whole 13 years. I felt, for perhaps 4 seconds, the entire size of what I was doing. 4 seconds. And then somebody put a beer in front of me and said something and I laughed, and it closed over, the way water closes. The autumn was small adjustments, all of them sensible, none of them examined together. In September, I moved from the 18,000 apartment back to a 12,001, and told everybody it was because the pool was never cleaned. In October I sold the good motorbike, and bought an older one, 44,000 in, 26,000 out, and told everybody I wanted something lighter for the hills. In the same month, I sold a watch Ingrid had given me for our 20th anniversary, a Longines, not valuable to anyone but me, to a shop on Phang Na Road for 9,000 baht, and told nobody at all. I stopped eating dinner before going out, and started eating at the bar late, which sounds like nothing, and was in fact a straightforward attempt to reduce a food bill in a way that did not look like reducing a food bill. Every one of these was defensible in isolation. Not one of them touched the actual line, which was 3,000 baht a night, 6 nights a week, 72,000 baht a month, 48% of everything I spent. I performed surgery on every part of my life except the tumor, and I did it in front of an audience, cheerfully, and nobody noticed, because from the outside a man moving apartments is a man moving apartments. Capital at the end of November, 560,000 baht. The other thing 2019 contained was Facebook, and I want to deal with that, because it is the part of my behavior I understand least and like least. I posted perhaps twice a week that year, and every single post was from the bar or the beach, and every one of them was of other people. The staff, the Norwegian, a table, a sunset, always with me in it somewhere, always with the same 3 or 4 men from the port pressing the like button from Rheinhausen at 8 in the morning German time on their way to a shift. One of them, Horst, whom I have known since 1981, wrote under the Songkran photograph, "Und wir hier im Regen," and us here in the rain. I read that comment probably 40 times. I want to be precise about what I was doing, because showing off is too small a word for it. Every one of those photographs was a report filed back to a place where I had been nobody in particular for 34 years, saying, "It worked. The decision was correct. Look at the evidence." And the evidence was real. That is the thing. The photographs are not lies. Every person in them is genuinely laughing. And the audience for the evidence was a group of men who would never come and check. And the cost of producing each report was between 2,000 and 4,000 baht. And I filed 2 of them a week for 6 years. I have not posted anything since 2020. Not one thing. Horst messaged me in 2022 asking if I was all right, and I told him I had got tired of the internet, which was the second lie I have told in this account, and I noticed they were both told to Germans about money, and I noticed that I have never once lied to a Thai person about anything. My 64th birthday was the 14th of December 2019, and I bought for 26 people. I know it was 26 because there is a photograph of the tables pushed together. It cost 41,000 baht, including a cake that Kun Rachani had made without telling me, and would not let me pay for. And I remember arguing with her about that. Seriously, for several minutes, because I could not stand it. That is the detail I would give a doctor if a doctor asked me to describe the disease. A woman tried to give me a cake, and I fought her. At some point that night, Terry raised his glass to me from the end of the bar. His 1 beer, 3 hours. And I went over and put my arm around him and told him he was a good man and bought him another. And he said cheers. 18 days later, on the 31st of December 2019, I had 380,000 baht, which at my rate was 10 weeks, and I did not know that number either. And I saw in the new year on the Seoul with everybody, and it was, I promise you, a magnificent night. Everybody in Phuket has a pandemic story, and I am not going to use mine, because it would be dishonest. Yes, 2020 closed the island. Yes, the bars shut in March and Patong emptied, and it was strange and frightening, and I have seen men my age genuinely destroyed by that period, through no fault of their own. It is simply that by March 2020, I had 110,000 baht and a pension, and the pandemic arrived approximately 4 months after the outcome was already fixed. If COVID had never happened, I would be sitting here telling you the same story, with the dates moved by a season. I have watched men in this town spend 6 years explaining themselves with that virus, and I understand the appeal completely, and I decline it, because the day I accept that excuse is the day the 11 million baht becomes something that happened to me. It did not happen to me. I did it, in a good mood, over 76 months, and every baht of it went to somebody who smiled and said thank you. What happened next was not dramatic. That is worth saying, because men imagine the crash, and there is no crash. I moved to Kathu in mid-2020, to a room with a fan and a shared water heater, 4,000 baht a month. I sold the second motorbike. I live on 47,000 baht a month, which in Kathu, without the bar, is genuinely adequate. I eat well, I have my medications, I swim at the public pool for 30 baht. I go to the bar perhaps twice a week now, and I drink 2 beers and I pay for those 2 beers, and everybody has been decent about it, and not one person has ever said a word, and their decency is a fine sandpaper that has been applied to me for 6 years. I will give you the specific texture of the descent, because 6 years of it happened in details this small. The first time I let a round go past me, 2020, 4 men at the table, my turn. I said I had to leave, and I left, and I sat on my bike in the car park for 11 minutes before starting it. The second time was easier. By about the 20th time, it was simply a fact about me that the table had absorbed, and nobody thought anything of it, and that absorption was worse than the shame had been, because shame at least implies you were once something else. In 2021, the Norwegian bought me a beer for the first time, and put it down without looking at me, which was the kindest thing anybody did for me in that entire decade, and which I could not thank him for. In 2023, a girl who had started that year asked me, in perfectly friendly conversation, whether I had ever had a good job in Germany. In 2024, I stopped going on Fridays because Friday is the loudest night, And the loud nights are the ones where money moves fastest, and the mathematics of 2 beers becomes visible against everybody else's 12. And in all 6 of those years, not once, I want this on the record because it is the thing that keeps me sitting here, not once did I consider going home to Germany, where I have a son, a granddaughter I have now met twice, a language I can think in properly, and a welfare state that would house me. I stayed in a fan room in Kathu, 7 kilometers from a bar I can no longer afford, and if you ask me why, the honest answer is the one I gave you at the beginning about the room turning toward you when you come in, except now the room turns because they are being kind, and I take that too. I have never once refused it. I take it twice a week, at a discount, and I know exactly what it is. In 2022, Terry died in his room in Kathu, alone, and was found by his landlady after 2 days, and they passed a bucket around the bar for the cremation, and I put in 500 baht, and standing there holding that 500 baht note, I finally did the arithmetic I had been avoiding since 2013. In 2017, I would have put in 5,000 without thinking, and in 2019, I would have paid for the entire thing and refused to discuss it. And then Kun Rachani said something while she counted the bucket. She said Terry had been like me before. Those were her words. Same you, before. I asked her what she meant, and she told me, in about 4 sentences, that in 2010 and 2011, Terry had been the man on Bangla who bought for everybody, that he had money from a business sold in England, and that it had taken him about 7 years. I had sat beside that man for 6 years and bought him beers out of pity and never asked him one question, and he never told me, and I understand exactly why he never told me, because I have now had 6 years of the same silence, and I have not warned anybody either. Not once. Until tonight. So, the stool at the end of the bar, which was Terry's stool, is now where I sit, and the staff still call me Papa Uwe. Most of them are under 25. Not one of them was working there in 2019. They have simply inherited the name, the way you inherit a chipped table, from people who are gone, and they use it warmly and constantly, and they have no idea what it refers to or what it cost. And every single time I hear it, I am reminded that I paid 11.2 million baht for a nickname now used by children who never saw me earn it. In February, a Swedish man arrived, 61, redundancy money, 5 months in, and he sat 2 stools down and started buying rounds. And last week he bought me dinner, because he had noticed I was careful with money and he wanted to be kind. And I did what nobody did for me. I told him. The whole thing, the numbers, 76 months, the stool he is sitting near. He listened properly. He thanked me. He said it was very good of me to be so open. And he said something else that I recognized instantly because I had said it myself to a man in 2014 whose name I have genuinely forgotten. He said that his situation was a bit different because he was not really a bar person. And then he bought a round for the table, because the table was there and it was his round, and I watched him do it, and I felt the pull of it in my own chest so strongly that I had to hold the bar. So I will finish with the only thing I actually know, which is not advice, because advice is what I have just proved does not work. It is this. The money was never the point, and it was never at risk from anybody but me. What I bought, every night for 6 years, was the sensation of being wanted in a room, and it is the finest sensation there is, and there is no scam in Thailand more expensive than a man who has found out where to buy it.